Hi everyone! I'm back with my July Plan With Me video, and I have to admit that I am pretty sad that June is coming to an end already because I absolutely love the fruit theme. It seriously made me feel so happy whenever I open my bullet journal, but this month I decided to go with a more toned down and calmer vibe. I couldn't decide between a light bulb or a firefly theme, so I thought I would just incorporate both, and I think they go really well together, so let's get right into the video. Starting off with the cover page, I'm using my Micron 01 pen and writing in July in this blocky style. It's really simple. You just write out the word in capital letters, and if there's only one downstroke, you make that line into the block. But if there are two sides, like in the letter U, then you just pick one of the sides to make blocky. At the top, I doodled in a few different twinkling things. I switched between hanging light bulbs, jars with swirly lights inside, and hanging stars. For the light bulbs and jars, I made sure to make two little loops at the bottom of the strings to make it look like it's actually tied around them. And you want to change up the shapes and sizes of them to make it look more interesting. At the bottom of the page, I sketched in this lantern with some little fireflies flying inside and outside around it. For the shape of the lantern, I literally just googled lantern doodles and there were so many different styles, so you can totally choose one that you like instead of this one if you want. And these fireflies are so simple. I just drew in like a teardrop shape for the body with a long oval wing above a shorter oval wing on both sides. You can also make them look like they're flying sideways by keeping all of the wings just on one side of the body, and that helps make the doodles look a little bit less flat, if you know what I mean. And behind them, I drew in a dotted line to show their little flight path, just to help fill in some of the empty space on the page. So instead of using like a bunch of different colors like I have been doing in the last few months, I decided to keep it simple and just go with two different shades of yellow and a dark gray. I used this rich gold yellow for July as well as for some of the hanging lights above, and I alternated that with this lighter yellow. I used the gray for the lantern and the tops of the light bulbs. And for the fireflies, I made the body and wings the lighter yellow color, and then I drew in a little circle on their ends with the darker yellow to make it look like their little butts were glowing like real fireflies do. For the calendar spread, I decided to go with this super funky layout, which is so different than anything I've done before, and I think it fits super well with this theme. I planned out for each box to be 6x6 with one square in between, and instead of drawing a long line for the entire box, I decided to use these little L-shaped marks on the corner of each one. I feel like it almost gives like a transparent look to these, so it's really similar to like the light bulbs in the glass jars. At the top, I drew in the hanging stars with these bigger light bulbs. Instead of doing the normal curly wire inside the bulbs, I'm going to draw in the prongs and connect them to the first letter of the weekdays, and that's going to be the glowy part inside the bulb, which turned out super cute. To-do list, I doodled in this larger glass jar and used the little glowy spirals for the bullet points. And there was a little bit of empty space left at the bottom, so I just filled them in with a few fireflies. To color in the top, I used the golden yellow shade, and to fill in the dates, I used the paler yellow and wrote out the numbers inside each box. I made them pretty big, and I plan on just writing my daily tasks right on top, which works out since they're such a light color. Now onto the mood tracker. This is also a new layout, but it's really simple. In honor of 4th of July, I wanted to make this look almost like a firework burst, but sticking with my theme, I made the fireflies look like they're bursting out from the middle of the page. So in the middle, I wrote mood tracker and added a circular string of stars. And using my Tombow brush pen, I drew in 31 little black circles around the stars, and I'm going to write in the dates on top with my white pen. So starting from each circle, I'm going to draw a line straight out, making sure they're all different lengths. with a firefly attached at the end. You also want to be sure to make them different sizes and flying in different directions. I'll be using the light yellow for when I'm happy, the gold yellow for when I'm just okay, and the gray for when I'm feeling really crappy. So this habit tracker isn't anything new. I wanted to keep it pretty simple. At the top, I doodled in the hanging stars, light bulbs, and jars as like a little border around the text. And for each habit, I used my Tombow brush pen to color in a long rectangle as the background for the text, which I'm going to write out in with my POSCA white pen. I'm just drawing in little circles for each date, and I'll fill them in with a yellow marker to show that I've completed that habit that day. In the end, I'm hoping they'll look similar to fireflies when you see them at night or from like really far away, and they just look like little specks floating around. I don't know, I just thought this would go better than using like regular box shapes. So moving on to my weekly spreads, these were all kept pretty simple. So this first week, I doodled in these different shaped light bulbs with the date numbers inside. And I used my Tombow brush pen to write out the days of the week on top and threw in a little note section at the bottom. Again, super quick and simple, nothing really to say about this. The next page I used faux calligraphy to write out the first letter of each day, and then I finished off with just like a normal smaller font style. To create a border for each section, I doodled in a firefly with the dotted lines behind them connecting back to the text. To make it look more interesting, you want to make them look like they're flying all sorts of ways instead of just in like a straight line. So you can curve the lines up and down and add like little loops here and there. For the next week, I'm doodling in the hanging stars, jars, and light bulbs at the top. Then for the dates, I'm just using the same block letter style that I used on the cover page. And finally, for the last week, you all could probably have guessed that I used this layout. It's just the absolute best way to fit in more than 7 days on a single page, and it's so quick to do. Each box is 8 by 10, and I just split the box in half for the weekend since I usually don't write as much on those days, and that left enough room for a little note section at the bottom. I used the Tombow brush pen and drew in a large square at the top of each box, and I added a little drop shadow behind each one. And using the same brush pen, I wrote out the dates underneath these squares. Then grabbing my POSCA white pen again, I'm writing in the first letter of each date inside the black square, and since I thought it was still a little too plain, I threw in some fireflies flying in front and behind the boxes. I used the yellow marker to color in the fireflies as well as the little square drop shadows, and I also used it to outline notes written at the bottom. And just to add in a little something extra, I used the gray marker to just throw in a drop shadow behind each larger section, being careful to not accidentally color over any fireflies. And that's it for my July Plan With Me video. It is so refreshing to just be able to stick with one color palette for a theme. I'll have to do that more often in the future. If you decide to recreate these spreads, please tag me on Instagram at AFZXX3. I can't wait to see them, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!